All right. So, welcome, and the story of Jacob continues. So, last week we left off. They were preparing to meet Esau. They knew Esau and 400 men were coming. Jacob didn't know what to expect. If you remember, there was kind of two different plans of like, do I send a present ahead or like one group ahead and then another group stay back so they can flee in the other direction? Do we break the group up into four different groups and send them one at a time? And so there was Jacob strategizing, and then after he kind of comes up with it, they ford the river. Jacob stays back and he has this encounter with an angel, maybe with God, where he's wrestling. He gets the name change, he gets blessed, but he also gets a limp. And that leads us to kind of the climax of the height of Jacob's story. He actually has to meet with Esau again. So, initial reactions after reading about this meeting of Jacob and Esau, what did you think? How did this go down? Was it what you expected?
Well, I expected it, but because that's what happens in the Bible.
Okay, so you knew the story before. Okay. Mary Ellen, what were you thinking?
It was what I expected, but also surprising.
Okay.
You know, that Jacob was presenting himself as the servant to Esau. However, when Esau wanted to reject all of the gifts, Jacob prevailed and convinced Esau to take all of the gifts. But then when Esau wanted him to come with him, whatever, Jacob went off on his own and,
Right.
Kind of asserted himself. And so I didn't expect that part, but I did expect convincing him to take the gifts, because there's, significance in that. So,
yeah.
I,
So you
I
have
thought,
this I'm glad you drew the two different parts out, because there's one part of the gift and then there's one part of like, do we stay together? Kind of a
yes,
discussion.
yes.
mhm.
And
So
by
Larry,
getting Esau to accept the gifts, he was establishing a different kind of relationship than if Esau had denied the gifts and Jacob accepted that. Then Esau still has the overseeing power or whatever. But Jacob trying to say asserted himself and convinced Esau to accept those gifts, which kind of changed the power structure a little bit between the two brothers.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
thought the strangest thing was there was absolutely no explanation of what was going on in the minds of either of the two of them. I mean, they finally came head on. Esau with 400 warriors and Jacob leading his pack of gifts, and they meet and everything's just lovely.
Yeah.
What, without any reasoning behind it. I mean, what moves them? It just seems sort of strange and incongruous to me that all of a sudden everything's just hunky-dory, everything. Funny.
So in digging into it, we'll see a little bit of the subtext, just a little bit, but you're right. A lot of this just resolves, a lot of this resolves because Esau decides that everything's okay.
Yeah.
But that's not what Jacob expected.
Exactly. True.
And not only does Esau say that, here's the one that wasn't supposedly very bright, that wasn't going to amount to anything. And he tells Jacob, oh, I don't need any of your gifts. I've got plenty. Wow, but where'd he get all that? I mean, all of a sudden, he's suddenly become equally successful. And it seems like they are at least meeting one another on an equal success basis, whereas before
Yeah.
Jacob was always cheating Esau out of his inheritance.
So any other initial thoughts before we jump in? All right, well, so let's dig into some of the details and kind of flesh out some of the subtext here, because as there always is, the scripture is not very descriptive. This is definitely not like Moby Dick, where like all the details are contained therein. This is very sparse, and they choose their words very specifically, which is where, like, if you only have a limited number of words, you can see why puns are some of their favorite things, is because you can get 3 meanings out of 2 words.
Okay.
So the first thing to know is some of this relies on vantage point, where they are coming from. So they are going from like the northern, or where Jacob was is in the north, and he's coming south. So actually I have a map. This is why I got the map. So you all can see what I'm talking about. All right. So based on the cities that were given in verse 18 and beyond that, kind of like the ending of the story where they talk about locations, Jacob starts up here, which this is the peninsula that's modern day Turkey. I actually don't quite know where this lands, but it's in and around Syria. Modern day Israel is this chunk. If you see this greener area there, that greener area is like modern day Israel, Palestine. This is the Sea of Galilee. This is the Dead Sea. So those are like your landmarks and your place, or your kind of orientation places. This is one of the major rivers. I always forget which one's the Tigris and which one's the Euphrates. So that is that river there. So he came a long way south, and this is where they're meeting, which is on the other side of the Jordan River. So that is modern day Jordan. This area up here around the Sea of Galilee has a landscape that is very similar to Northern California. If you know that kind of, it's both topography and weather, they're very similar. So when Jacob says he looked up and he saw Esau, he's probably looking across a valley and is seeing like a horde of people, because there is such elevation changes. It is a mountainous region, but he's probably looking from like a high point across a valley, if that makes sense. I'm going to bring this back up at the end, because that also has the locations of where Esau goes and where Jacob goes. But that's kind of the initial descent. Jacob had a long journey south, and then they're wrestling, and then he's like looking across to the other side of the valley, and he sees Esau, which means he still has time to prepare. And so this is the final plan he ends up with. He sends the kids. He breaks the group into 4 groups. You get the children, and let's see, what is it? Among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maids. He puts the maids with their children up front. Which, I hate to say it, those are the least valuable to him. He's going to send the maids and their children first.
Yeah.
Then he sends Leah and her children. And then Rachel and Jacob are last.
Well, wait, Jacob, I thought it says
or not Jacob, Joseph.
Joseph, yeah.
Joseph and Rachel are last.
Wow, yeah.
That's to protect, I assume.
Say that again?
Protect them, even to make them safer, to be behind those older people?
Exactly, yes. So he is giving Rachel and Joseph the most protection. If anyone's going to survive, it's going to be them. So it seems like he hasn't learned how to manage his wives any better than he used to. He's still going to put them in a hierarchy. But what was interesting to me is he is not at the back with Rachel. He goes out in front and is bowing ahead of everyone. So if anyone's going to get hurt, he's actually the one that's out in front.
Mhm.
And bowing down, we've talked a little bit about feet before, especially when we were talking about the Gospels and like how gross feet are. And the one thing about bowing down is you are like bowing down in the dirt, in the dust, in the grime. This is actually a very humbling thing. And especially if you're like bowing down on the ground, which is like the tradition is like head to the ground kind of a bow. And he would like stand up, walk further, and bow again. This is very humbling. This is like you are putting yourself in the dirtiest place. And he's also making himself extremely vulnerable to attack. Because if they wanted to, if your face is on the ground, you cannot see what's coming and you can get hit in the head and die instantly. So he's doing this 7 times, which is the perfect, like the perfect number for those who like numerology. He's done it the perfect number of times. And so that is how he has presented himself to his brother. So pausing there before we get to Esau and his reaction, what do you think of Jacob's strategy here, or his how he's presenting himself and his family?
He's not a threat. You know, he's presenting himself to Esau as unthreatening as he can possibly, you know, set it up.
Mm-hmm.
So he's not coming as a challenge. You know, it's a physical demonstration of the attitude he's trying to send to his brother.
Yeah.
I wondered if is this to indicate that you're sorry? Or I don't think he is sorry, but would he be indicating that by bowing like that? You don't know. Okay, I was just
I
curious.
mean, oh yeah, Larry, go for it.
When you think of all the calculations that Jacob had done in the past, the speaking and so forth, to think he's suddenly now just going to go out and lay himself down in front and let Esau club him, this may be Jacob's way of getting around his brother.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his strategy is going to be to appease him and then let him go his way, I'll go mine, you know, and there'll be peace.
Mm-hmm. So without a conversation with him, we don't fully know what's going through Jacob's head.
Yeah.
Like there's one side where, yes, he could entirely be cold and calculating that I am never going to beat my brother at strength. So if I act weak, he is not going to strike because you wouldn't strike someone weaker than you. And so you could see how it could be calculating, or he could be truly remorseful. That still is an option, and that this, like, he is willing to, like, some people, I mean, there are people in this world that are willing to humiliate themselves as a survival strategy. I will not say that people won't. We have seen people in recent times that, yes, are willing to humiliate themselves if they think it's advantageous. That said, this is really humbling at the same time. To me, or like me, is my personal read on it, is like, this is not the same kid who left.
Okay.
It feels like something has changed in the pure fact that he's willing to do this at all.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some kind of calculation. Especially knowing how the story wraps up, I don't think he's not being calculated, but I wonder if he has been humbled just in his own experience.
Okay.
Mary Ellen?
Yeah. Right now he's a nomad, and he needs a place to settle and set up camp and all of these wives and lots of children and all of the animals and so on. He needs to find a place to reestablish himself, and Esau is kind of the key to that. If you can convince Esau that he's not a threat, then he can establish his household in peace and kind of hope that his brother never comes and attacks him, but you know, they can be comfortable within range of each other. And he really does need his brother's cooperation right now in order to establish that.
Right. So I think it was in the notes a few weeks back that I talked about John Nash.
No.
Maybe I've been writing a lot, and because I have to pre-do some of the notes, I forget when I write things. John Nash is a Nobel Prize winner. And he was one of the code breakers in that cracked some of the military codes. I believe it was World War II. But
he was the one that was a movie made out of him, about him. Yeah.
Yeah, A Beautiful Mind.
Mm-hmm.
So the movie A Beautiful Mind was written around a real life figure. I believe his name is John Nash. But one of the things the thing that he won the Nobel Prize for was about game theory. And his big thing was actually noticing that competition isn't always the best thing. That competition pitting people against each other, often you have a winner and you have a loser, but especially when it's multiple people and you have one winner, you only have one winner and 7 losers. Versus cooperative strategies, often you may not get everything you want, but you have more winners when you work cooperatively. So cooperation can actually be more beneficial than competition. And you kind of, if Jacob is going from like a land of like dog eat dog, he might be trying to build a space of cooperation instead of competition. And yeah, if his brother's the key to cooperation, what does it take to get him back on your good side?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, that's interesting because Nash wasn't he a mathematician or yeah, I've always intrigued that a mathematician would come up with something that doesn't appear related to math. It's related to sociology or something. It doesn't, or psychology.
He connects it to chess, and so that's the back door into math is chess. So like it is mathematical. I tried to read up on it a little bit more, and it's a bit, I know the effects of it because I've read analyses of it, but I can't read the actual studies itself. It's too much for me.
Yeah, okay, so it is connected. Yeah. Oh, all right. Well, Jacob certainly understands game theory.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Jacob needs to present himself differently to his brother. I mean, when he left under some duress, and you know, the conflict between he and Esau was very definitely there and very definitely man against man. And even though he won the blessing from his father, there was no goodwill there at all. So when the two brothers parted, there was a lot of animosity there. And so he wants to come back, and he needs to convince his brother that he's coming back with a different attitude. Yeah. So, you know, I can see where his humbling himself is part of the master plan.
So thinking about it in like our context, our situations, I know most families have some conflict. I've never met a family that didn't have some kind of disagreement or some kind of gears like grinding against each other. And it's interesting that time heals some wounds. You do get some distance, and sometimes it's like, oh, we were kids. We're just going to forget about it. We're not those people anymore. And it's fascinating that like that happens sometimes. And then other times it's fascinating that where you get the two people together that were having the conflict and it comes right back. Like time really doesn't always heal wounds, and all of a sudden they're right back at it. And if there is no change in posture, if there's no humbling, if there's no like admitting that you were wrong, if it's only like holding on to I was wronged, it actually never resolves. Like, have you all seen this, like, in any shade in between those two, where time has actually healed something versus like time did nothing and neither of them wanted to budge? Have you seen this?
Yeah. Or another thing that seems to happen is people develop a relationship again, but they never deal with what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
We're gonna
It's
put it on the shelf and pretend it doesn't exist, kind of a
paper,
thing.
Yeah. Right.
paper, but it interferes with true intimacy and meaningfulness in the relationship.
Mhm.
So
It seems too, the one that was going to make the decision is Esau.
yeah,
I mean, when they parted, Esau was trying to kill him,
Mhm.
you know, and now this time he goes out and embraces him, you know. So he looks at what I gather, he must have been moved by what Jacob was doing, because the two of them, as far as we know, have had no contact at all in the interim. This is the first time they laid eyes on one another since they parted, and yet the dynamics have turned 180 degrees around.
Well, to add to that, Larry, that Esau comes with 400 men. I mean, he's
Yeah.
ready to do battle.
Yeah, yeah.
So
He's got-
let's
I think he has more than Jacob, doesn't he?
So let's actually talk about Esau's situation that's happening kind of in the background. Well, we haven't gotten very far, but in the actual verses, but that's okay. Verse 4, Esau ran to meet him. It moves very quickly and they embrace and they kiss. But for that moment where Esau is all of a sudden running at Jacob, I wonder if there was a moment of panic. All of a sudden you see your big brawny brother running at you.
Oh, well, no, I looked at it sort of the opposite, that here's Jacob coming in a way of abeyance. You know, he's supplicating himself in front of Esau, and instead Esau runs out to greet him.
Right. Yeah, Esau is running out to greet him. Or I was looking at the notes and they said even the phrase like Esau ran makes it sound warlike. I guess it's the subtext of the thing where it's like Esau ran, but it could be misinterpreted, I guess is the point. If you just see your brother with 400 men all of a sudden running at you, never mind if it's for a hug. It might be a moment of panic.
Yeah, it could easily be.
Now, can we go back to this verse 3, where he bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother?
Okay.
So would
They might
this
be close.
was he be moving as he's bowing, that he bows once, runs towards his brother, bows again, runs some more? Would that be what this is implying?
Yeah, there's it's not like bow run, but there is a forward movement often. It's I may be mixing traditions because there's a way you do it in Buddhism that I've seen a lot, but typically with the bow, yes, there would probably be like a slight movement forward. It wouldn't be like major. I mean, they're still moving at the speed of children. But there is a progression forward.
But he himself went ahead of them. He could be running.
Yeah. Went ahead of them. At any rate, let's talk about probably what's happened with Esau in the meantime. So this is entirely off screen. We're not really given, this is where we just are going to put on our imaginations. Jacob left, right? Jacob technically got the inheritance by the soup and the birthright and all of that. Like, he got the blessing he was able to take with him, but he actually didn't get to keep the thing that he tricked Esau with a bowl of soup or the bowl of stew. because he left.
Mhm.
Jacob never collected on his inheritance, which means Esau still has it.
Mhm.
Esau continued to live with Isaac and with Rebekah, which means he actually got all the stuff. It looks like by this point, Isaac and Rebekah are no longer with us. We don't really, at least yet, we don't have their death.
Later on.
Later on, okay.
Actors, yeah. They bury them together. The two
Okay.
brothers bury them together.
All right. Okay, yeah. Thank you. They do reunite again to bury their parents. But at this point, like Esau's still living, like Esau is with his parents. He has the family business. That's where his things came from because Jacob never had access to them. All of the things that Esau has are actually the things he was supposed to have as the firstborn.
Okay.
So he made it out okay. Don't worry about him. The stereotype with Edom is that they're marauders, they're raiders. This is fairly standard in like old-timey or like even some places today where you have the people who stay in one place and you have the people who go around. Sometimes nomadic people raid agricultural places for the things they need. Esau might just be a raider, which is why he's traveling around with 400 guys. It might not necessarily be to meet Jacob. This might just be them like patrolling or looking out. You see this, actually King David was a part of one of these bands later on. It's kind of funny. It's interesting to see it later on in the story, but he might just be out and about and these might be his 400 guys. He actually may have not come to attack Jacob. This is just his posse. And he is the leader of them. So he has at least gained some status because he still has the family business. And he has actually become somewhat of a general that may be patrolling around with 400 men. He is a leader unto himself and he has made a name for himself. So Larry, you are right to say these two are meeting as equals because this is just like he actually gained the leadership skills he didn't have before. He is an actual leader now. And he has people under his command. So does that change any of the posturings of Esau if you remember, oh, he actually got his inheritance and he seems to be a leader in his own right, whether these are 400 of his friends or whether he is like commanding 400 people on a regular basis. Larry.
Yeah, and he tells Jacob, I'm all right. I don't need your stuff, So it sounds as if Esau isn't interested in killing his brother anymore, that he's gotten over all the wrongs that he thought were done to him because he's come out all right.
Yeah.
And it's been 20 years.
That's what I was going to add. We can't forget the 20-year gap.
Yeah.
A lot can happen for growing up.
They're both very different. Jacob's different too. He's not hanging out in the kitchen with his mother anymore. He's developed some leadership skills and already had. He used to get what he wanted by manipulation and trickery. I don't know if that's what he's still doing or not.
Maybe Esau had a good therapist.
Esau had his parents to guide him too.
Yeah, he did.
So, I mean, there is what's the saying? The best revenge is to live a good life.
Yeah.
I feel like Esau falls into that. Like, he actually has a good life now.
Oh, yeah.
I've also seen it where the best thing that happens to siblings is they move out. Where it's like, it may just be they needed to not be under the same roof. Yeah, Mary Ellen?
Doesn't he have like a niggling thought in the back of his mind? If his parents are still alive and his younger brother comes back who had received the blessing from their father, doesn't he have just kind of a niggling wondering, how this is all going to play out when they all get back together?
Well,
So
Esau suggests they travel together. You know,
Yeah.
he tries to get Jacob to go along with him, and then Jacob has this big excuse, you know, well, he's got all these animals and kids and he can't move fast enough. So you go first and I'll follow.
But if
Then he
Jacob
goes
goes,
off and builds a house. You know, he's certainly not in any hurry.
but
Well,
if Jacob does go with Esau, then Esau is the clear leader, commander of all, you know, the entourage that's following
Mhm.
and coming back into his camp, you know, triumphant, presenting his younger brother and all of this. It puts Esau firmly in a leadership role. If Jacob were to join him and Esau slow down his progression to match the cattle and the children, whatever, it puts Esau very clearly in a leadership role. And by refusing to do that politely, common sense, whatever, Jacob is already separating himself from that.
Jacob is supposed to be establishing a country, isn't he? Supposed to be
Mhm.
now? Or what has happened later?
So Jacob and Esau are seen as the two founders for two different countries. Yes.
Yeah. That's where it ends up, yeah.
So Esau, Edom, Jacob, Israel,
Yeah.
Israel.
Yeah.
So you do have these interesting dynamics, and once again, I feel like this is one of the more like the very human chapters where we can see family dynamics all the time, where like you do have this power dynamic between the two brothers. They have been at each other, and yeah, Esau might be wanting to like look good in the eyes of his parents, like, look, I brought the prodigal son home. And that does give some kind of authority, some kind of leadership. It is a like a badge on his like Boy Scout sash. But you also have this interesting dynamic where I don't think Esau is thinking about the next. I think he's thinking about like, oh, it'll look good if I bring my brother home. But the next step of like, how do we live together again? I don't think they've done the work for that. And sometimes I've seen it with like my own family that it's like there's like a hurrah, we're together again, but you see the people haven't actually done the true difficult hard work of learning how to live together again. And that's kind of, I feel like that's at the heart of the question we're asking of like, so they've done the work to forgive each other, but have they done the work to live together, which is a different question.
Very different.
So backing up just a little bit before we go forward, we see a dynamic that we've seen before, and I just want to pull it out again just because it's always interesting every time it comes up. So Jacob shows the entire family, you get the maid 1, maid 2, you get Leah, you get Rachel, and Esau asks, what do you mean by the company that I have met? To find favor with my Lord. The implication is by showing them this way, Jacob may be offering all of his family as a present of like, here you go, I am making retribution. Like, and that's when Esau says, no, I don't want your entire family and all your stuff. Sue, did you have a thought?
Well, I wondered if he was offering the people as well as the crops, but Esau took the presents, but he didn't take the people, right? He took
Well, give me just a moment. I'll explain some of the dynamics here.
Oh, okay.
So the initial offering is literally everything Jacob has. Everything Jacob has in this is to find favor with my Lord. It is offered up technically as a present. Esau says, no, I have enough. And then Jacob returns and saying, no, you need to accept my present to find favor with you, accept the present. So he first offers everything. Esau says no, he offers a smaller portion of it and says, don't accept everything, but you have to accept this smaller piece. Which, if you remember back with like Abraham dealing with locals, Abraham's like, I want to buy a piece of land. And the person would be like, no, we'll give it to you for free. And Abraham was like, oh, but come on, this measly piece of land, let me pay you a little bit. And the person's like, no, I will accept a tiny piece of what you're offering. And then Abraham would be like, fine, I will pay you these little bits. And then you would find out that it was actually a lot of money that he paid, but like the posturing was like, I will pay you just a little bit for this piece of land. That's a barter system. These brothers are bartering. Take all that I have, brother. Oh, no, I cannot take everything you have. I have enough. Well, then take this little gift of a peace offering. Okay, I'll take your little gift. So you can see that kind of negotiation back and forth. They are negotiating here. And the other interesting, like, once again, word choice, word play. The word present that they use in the Hebrew also can mean blessing. In this word, Jacob may be trying to bless Esau back and give it back to him. The implication is actually righting the wrong of the blessing he stole. So the present in some ways is in lieu of the blessing he initially got, tricked his father out of. So this actually really is an apology here. Does that make sense? The other really interesting just choice of words is Jacob goes on and says, for truly, or like, take my present, for truly your face is like seeing the face of God.
Face of God, yeah.
Which is really high praise. If you remember, he wrestled God last night and he looked at the face of God and lived. And now he's saying Esau looks like that. That's actually really high praise.
Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
So it does seem, he does seem genuinely apologetic when you look into some of the wording of it.
Well, so see the forgiveness is like God? Is that loving, the loving face, the forgiving face, or is it just, we don't know.
I mean, the words say seeing your face is like the face of God. It's like, whatever you think of that representing is, I mean, left up to you.
But if you saw God's face, weren't you supposed to drop dead?
Yeah. Technically, I mean, but it may be like an expression of like the love of God, your forgiveness of God. Like, he definitely wasn't expecting this of Esau.
Yeah.
So something about this inner exchange is moving him that much. Anyways, so Esau accepts the gift and maybe as like a price for the blessing. It's, the language is very punny there, so but then you have this negotiation of, well, let me travel alongside you. It might be, let's spend some time together. I have 400 people. I can protect you. Like, it may also be an offer of protection because he is traveling with literally everything he owns, and Jacob's rich and he might need some protection. But he says, no, I don't want to slow you down. But that's also why he offers, like, let me leave some of my men with you. It actually may be offering to protect his belongings and his kids.
Okay.
But he does deny it. He says, I will meet you at Seir, which is a different name for Edom, because Edom technically hasn't been established yet. And Jacob agrees to meet him in basically where he lives, or like where Esau is living. And then Jacob doesn't go there. So once again, I'm gonna switch over to the map. Hold on. Why is this going weird? Okay. There we go. Now we can share this again. All right. So we started up here. They are, Seir is way down here. It's in the desert region south of the Dead Sea.
Mhm.
This is like right next to the Sinai Peninsula, and so Edom gets established down here. Where Jacob builds a house is Sukkot, which it literally just means booths. The booth that he builds for the cattle is what this city is called for some reason. But that is like right along the Jordan here. And then he travels into the land of Canaan to Shechem. And so this is the place where he actually buys some land. But his brother is way down here. They're meeting somewhere in this area. He says, okay, Esau, I'll meet you down south, and then he goes west, is basically what happens.
Okay.
Is that where to present day, is that northern Israel? Where he was? Where Jacob was, as he established himself in northern Israel? Okay.
Northern Israel. Not as far north as Galilee, but it's more in the area that will be known as Samaria later on.
The what area?
Samaria.
Oh, Samaria. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Samaria is in the northern kingdom of that will be known as Israel. So
in the story of when they talk about the Samaritans, they're talking about non-Jews, at least
so there's two words that are close. If it's Sumerians with a U, that's a different group of people that is in like Iraq. Yeah, Samaritans with an A is part of what would be the nation of Israel when it breaks in half. And you have the southern kingdom of Judah and the northern kingdom of Israel. Samaria is within the northern kingdom. It separates Galilee from Judah. The middle section is Samaria, where why they have a bad reputation is it's considered tainted because it mixed with some of the Canaanite religions.
Oh, okay.
And so it's Jewish adjacent. They are not Israelites. They actually would see themselves as the true Israelites, but they had a little bit of mixing of paganism into their Israelite religion.
So what I'm wondering is that the Canaanites call God El. E-L?
Yes.
Okay. A friend of mine, in fact, a Jewish friend of mine said when she was going to Sunday school, whatever she did to get her education, they always referred to God as El.
Yeah, that's like
not Yahweh, not what
Yahweh is never used by Jewish people. That is a Christian term.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's an approximation of what we think the word is supposed to be, but in the Jewish religion, you don't say the name of God, so you won't even try to approximate it, so they will never say it. El is not like capital G God, it is lower G God.
Okay.
And that comes into play actually at the end of the story, so we'll get there in a minute or two. Larry, did you have another question too?
But I was just going to say, so Jacob never went farther south than Shechem or whatever it was. So
Nope.
He never got down to Seir.
Nope.
Okay, gotcha.
He never tries.
Okay.
So this is one of the final tricks, and it is like Jacob pulls one over on Esau one more time. Jacob has no intentions to go with Esau. And it's kind of clear that, yeah, he sends his brother along. He makes sure his brother sends no people with him. And he goes in the opposite direction.
Okay. No wonder he built a house. He wasn't planning on leaving anyway.
Yeah. He was never planning to go with Esau.
Wow.
Okay. So yeah, he builds the house. Don't think like brick and mortar house. It probably is still like somewhat collapsible. He is still a nomadic person. So they they go their own way. And then we have all the details in the bottom for the ending of it. Jacob comes to Shechem in the land of Canaan. You get where he comes from, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that word. And then he buys a plot of land, kind of like the people before him. He stakes a claim, he buys a plot of land, and there he erects an altar called El Elohi Israel. So this is where we see this one word actually has a fascinating kind of thing to pick apart that I'll do briefly. So like you said, Sue, El means God. So the direct translation for this is God, the God of Israel. So there's the two L's both mean God. So God, comma, the God of Israel. God in Canaanite religion was kind of just like the term for the gods.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
like kind of how we say, oh, that is a god or goddess. That is what the term El means. That's how it's used. And
Okay.
so it's a shrine to God, a god, but it's also the God of Israel. The he in Elohi is the in the word. And so this seems to be one of those times where it's almost taking the pagan Canaanite religion and it's kind of saying your pagan ideas of God is tied actually to this monotheistic God of Israel.
Okay.
And so you see kind of how something that, or this is almost like the name here is a transition from a pagan area to this monotheistic area. So it's just cool because you can kind of see the motion to it. This will come into play later on, once again, in the split kingdoms, because remember that the title Israel, while we associate it with the entire region, becomes the northern kingdom, which is not where Jerusalem is. This is another important shrine in the northern kingdom, and it has the name Israel attached to it. So
Now, could that Israel attached to it? Jacob isn't Jacob anymore. He's Israel.
yeah,
And so, even though they're not using it in the scripture here, but when he named the altar, could he be naming the Israel part of it as his name?
yes. This is definitely a situation of both and. This is the God. This is an altar to God, the God of Jacob, but using his other name Israel. But because he is kind of given the name of the nation, it is both Jacob's God and it is the nation's God. The way that this is put in here, it's definitely not, it is an addition. This is one of those additions where like the priests are going in, oh yeah, this is the shrine that he built. And so it's doing double duty there. And it probably existed when the story was like being written down. They knew of this shrine. And so they're like, oh yeah, Jacob, he's Israel. He built the shrine that we all know. So it does double duty. So, but 100%, yeah, this is Jacob's shrine. But even if you think about how we talk, or like Moses is one that he talks about the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. That's kind of how God is referenced a lot in Exodus, is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so he is the God of Israel because he is the God of Jacob.
Okay.
You can tell they love wordplay. Like they are literally relying on words having 5 meanings. So, all right. But bringing it back around, as I said, everything in Jacob's story makes a full circle. This is kind of the last full circle. There's one more with the addendum of like burying the parents, but he left in distress and now he is returned with forgiveness, even though they're not going to live together. Jacob evidently decides he still doesn't want to live with his brother. But there is reconciliation. The wounds have been repaired. So this is kind of the conclusion to Jacob's major story arc. And what do you think of where he started to where he ends and kind of how it wraps up here?
I think it's pretty impressive. I mean, he left with nothing. You know, he served all that time with Laban, you know, indentured servant sort of a situation, you know, so it, you know, the phrase pulled himself up by the bootstraps. I mean, he really worked very, very hard was a very manipulative time of thinker to, you know, come out the winner in most of the situations. He challenged Laban when Laban came to get the statue of the goddess. He succeeded in that. I mean, he really did a 180 on his circumstances in this time period. It's kind of impressive.
Well, yeah, I think it is, except he still uses trickery, which to me is, I guess maybe you have to in that world use trickery. It's interesting to me that Esau lets him get away with it. That she never, you know, comes back and says, why didn't you come?
Yeah, Larry.
Not only that, he did all of those things with the support of God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Esau had the support of God.
Sure.
Oh, Jacob did too.
Yeah.
Where, okay, somewhere along the line, God decided that lying and cheating wasn't okay. I guess that was
When we get down to the end of Genesis, we can always jump into Exodus, because there you get some of the setup of the rules and the morality system, but that's another chonky book, and we'll get there when we get there. We still have to finish Genesis. But Clay, what were you gonna say?
I didn't comment at the beginning, but I saw this as a strategy the whole way through.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob continuing his strategy, and a little bit of it almost like wrestling for the check, you know, at the restaurant type thing between two guys. But I saw the whole thing as strategy. I really found this to be an interesting chapter, but there's nothing about it in our How to Read the Bible. It skips right from chapter 32 to 34.
Oh, does it?
And the bottom of, you know, my annotated Bible, usually there are lots of comments. There's hardly anything. There's just maybe an explanation of a word or two. I just see this as a really, really neat chapter. I mean, really interesting. And all the discussion we've had just has really been, but it's as though it's like, oh, well, let's just move on to, you know, Dinah, her story. Anyway, I wondered if you had any thought about that I just see this as a really interesting chapter to have read. So I just wondered if you had any thought on the fact that it doesn't seem to be commented upon anywhere.
Oh, that's a shame, because
Yeah,
it's
I
one
was
of those.
surprised. There's nothing. There's literally no reference to chapter 33 in that book.
Yeah, I actually looked at it 2 or 3 times and I went, okay, am I missing something here? It goes right from wrestling and the information about the sinew and the thigh to a whole new start of a new section that talks about Dinah. And yet all this discussion today has been so interesting, and our viewpoints on it and everything. And so many of you had many of the same viewpoints I did, except that I just think Jacob was strategy all the way through. And just wondered what you thought, Chris, that it just doesn't seem to be important enough to comment upon, either in the annotated or in the How to Read the Bible book.
I'm okay, Mary Ellen, I want to hear what you think.
I was just going to make a comment to Clay that for the sessions that you missed, it's wonderful to go on YouTube and listen into you know, the discussions that we had when you weren't there. So, you know, I just highly recommend. I like to listen to the ones on YouTube, and sometimes I'll listen to last week's to refresh my memory to go into this week. I really like doing it, so you might enjoy that.
Yeah, I have not this time because of all the stuff going on with Christmas, but when I missed things in September, I went back and listened. It's kind of fun to see you all. It's very interesting to say, I know those people, and then to listen to them. But you're right. I would like to go back and listen to the ones I missed. It's just this isn't the right time right now, but yeah, this has been so interesting.
So I
And
was
again,
trying to see if I had another commentary on the Old Testament. So this one is specific because it is considered like comprehensive. It is one book that like mostly covers the whole thing, most of it at least. And so if you keep reading, you'll actually get the history of, this goes way beyond Genesis. And I was trying to see if I had something that was more Genesis specific or one of my other textbooks. Because no, for me, this story is huge. This is, like I said, to me, this is the climax of where everything comes full circle. And not that there's a neat, tidy little bow tied on it, but this is the emotional conclusion of Jacob's kind of story arc. He
and
doesn't
it's a
die
chapter
yet.
we had to see. Yeah.
The writer, please say. I was going to say
yeah, go for it, Sue.
The writer seems to, when I read him, he picks and chooses, and the stuff he's really interested in, he expands. He's probably not interested in this part or something. I don't know.
So what this book is not is a line by line commentary. What I can look to see if we have one we might have it in the church library. I'm gonna go look. What they do sell is like having a book this size for each book of the Bible. Most pastors have them. I have an online copy of a few of them, but I don't actually have a physical copy myself, but I think there's one set that's in there. And that's often what we use for when we do like in-depth research. I had to use it a lot in seminary. That will give you your line by line detail, and they do not skip anything. The second best thing, if I am to hawk products, I am not an influencer. I get no kickbacks for this. But my Bible you cannot see that because it's white. My Bible that I use is the HarperCollins Study Bible. It's the NRSV, the New Revised Standard Version, which is a little bit more academic than the NIV, which tends to be what most people in the pews have. But the HarperCollins one specifically is actually, we were required by Princeton to buy this one because, if I can show you, a lot of the notes when I'm getting like language cues, you can see half of my page is actually notes down here. And that's consistent for the entirety of the Bible, that these are really well researched. And so, this Bible is written by professors for seminarians, and so you get a lot of the like language things of like, oh, here's the pun. I know some of the puns, but this actually helps me pull out more of the puns. And it has a lot of language notes in it. So if you, HarperCollins would, I can send you all an email if you want to look up the bio of this version of it, and you'll see a lot of the things that I'm telling you already pre-read in it. Or I'm a lot of the nitpicky notes I'm pulling out of the notes of this one.
The New Oxford Annotated Bible is an RS New Revised Standard Version also, but it doesn't have much about the puns. So I don't notice it anyway. It's more, they don't. No, okay. So it's helpful to have. It has a lot of language stuff, but it's more about, well, it may have something about the puns, but it doesn't call it puns.
I think that's more my term. It's like this one, where does it say? So this is reading directly from it. Gift, better, my blessing, meaning when it says the gift, it means the bless or my blessing. When it kind of makes those comments, I call it pun just because we understand puns are like words that you can read multiple ways. So that's more my term than a scholarly term.
They aren't really puns in the traditional sense of the word, but which puns are supposed to make you laugh.
That's a modern sensibility.
Okay.
In the ancient world, they weren't funny. Puns were considered high literature because it's basically, maybe it's better to say wordplay.
Wordplay. Well, the notes are pretty good in this, but they're not, they don't appear to be the same as what you're working for exactly. So, but it is the right translation. It's the translation's the same as yours.
Okay, yeah.
Isn't that the RSV?
And
No, it's a revised standard version, new revised standard version.
yeah, so that one's the same.
Yeah.
So with every translation, there's always a question of, do you translate it literally by what it says or what you think it means? Or do you translate it to something that is closer to our colloquialism? This is considered more, the Bible I use is considered more academic.
Yeah.
Because it is closer to the original and sometimes harder to understand.
Yeah, okay.
And the one I'm using is a college edition, revised standard version, 1965.
The
So yours
revised
is the predecessor for mine.
Yeah, this is what my husband used for his Bible class. I can see his writing in it. And, you know, it has some notes at the bottom, but that's, you know, I'm using an almost 60-year-old Bible
It
here.
doesn't appear to be, there's not that much difference between the RSV and the other one. I mean, I got, my parents gave me the revised standard version when I was in college, so it was even before 1964. When they knew I was going to major in religion.
The thing
I
that
like
will
the
make
King James version, so.
the thing that makes a difference is the scriptures that deal with the Dead Sea Scrolls. That is where it actually helps to have sometimes a more modern Bible, is for those that had impact, because the Dead Sea Scrolls did not necessarily agree with the traditional Hebrew scriptures. But that's a whole other discussion. I mean, I love to talk about
is that in the new revised standard version they use the Dead Sea Scrolls?
It will be in the, they don't change. Well, there's some where they had grammatical changes because they thought that there's a grammatical error, and so they were able to make some changes that. But like one of the really big changes that people still don't quite know what to do with, and so it won't be in the main text, it'll be like a little note and it says check notes, and it'll be in the bottom, is the crossing of the sea in Exodus. Our traditional scripture says Red Sea, which kind of implies they crossed from Egypt to the Sinai Peninsula across a huge body of water. And the Dead Sea Scrolls don't say red, they say reed.
Reeds, yeah. The Sea of Reeds.
The Sea of Reeds, which changes the story dramatically. And people don't know what to do with, because that implies they crossed a marsh and not part of the ocean.
Big difference.
That is. And so how do you deal with big differences like that? That's a question. The Dead Sea Scrolls didn't really influence, that I know of, they didn't influence Genesis as much. They influenced a lot of other books though. So. But with that, folks, I believe we are done for the day. We have
And you
made it.
thought we might end early.
I thought so. Joke's on me.
Never.
We see you in January.
In January, right? Not the first week, but the second week. That's vacation time, like I said. Otherwise, we're going weekly because I don't have that committee meeting, and I'm very excited.
Oh, okay. But in January, it's going to be the first week is the first Tuesday we're not meeting. Is that correct?
Because I will still be on vacation.
Okay.
So, but what I will say, the next chapter that we are going to read is a delicate story.
Yeah.
This is one of the texts that is called the text of terror, because it talks of a very hard subject, and there's a lot that happens in it. So just read it carefully. We're going to talk about some of the nuances. There is politics, but there's also sexual trauma and vengeance and a lot of things. And so we'll talk a little bit about sexuality in the ancient worlds, kind of what guards sexuality, and we'll talk about whether or not Jacob's trickery rubs off on his children, because we see a situation go sideways. So what's up, Mary Ellen?
Chris, when we're talking about, when we're going to meet and whatever, you had put in one of the bulletins, I'm thinking, kind of the whole schedule for what we were going to do with Genesis at that point, with what the date was, what the scripture would be. Would you do that again for the new year?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, because I found it very helpful.
Great, can do.
Okay, thanks.
So I'll try to put that together so it goes out in the January newsletter. How does that sound?
Great, thanks.
Perfect. All right. So can I pray us out for today?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Let us pray. Good and gracious God, we look again at scripture, and again we see flawed people. At a certain point, it would almost be easier to see stories of perfect people doing perfect things so we knew what perfection looked like. And again, the people you choose to partner with and to tell your story are flawed. They have misjudgments. They work the situation the best they can, and they try to make the best out of hard situations. And in the end, God, I am so grateful for that, because by reading this, we know that we have space in your story. That we may be more like Jacob, who tries to work situations all the time and sometimes doesn't always work out the way he expects or the way we expect. Sometimes we are more in line with Esau, and sometimes we are more in line with so many other characters that are hard to list. But God, we're so grateful that we have so many stories where you stay by your people, even in their flaws, even in their mistakes. And your promise is to be with us and that things will turn out for the good. And so we always seek after the good and to be the better versions of ourselves. So God, we pray that in this Christmas season, we can see the best in other people and the best in ourselves. Help us all to celebrate and find the joy of the season, and bless this group. Help them to stay healthy over the cold season or the cold weeks ahead, and may they find joy and love in the season as well. We pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
All right.
Happy Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry
Yeah,
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.